Have you ever thought that the first person to awaken something deep inside you might not be a wise philosopher, but a little boy holding a candle? Have you ever seen a dog trembling in front of its own reflection, and then, with one brave leap, it overcame the very fear that you too might be carrying in your heart? And have you ever imagined that a thief quietly breaking through a wall in the middle of the night could teach you a life-changing lesson about perseverance and transformation? Sounds strange, maybe even a little absurd, right? But for one Buddhist master on his path of spiritual discovery, these were the exact moments that shaped him. 3 unlikely teachers, a child, an animal, and someone who had lost their way, each planted a seed of wisdom in him that no scripture ever could. The story goes like this. In a small, peaceful monastery nestled deep in the mountains where the birds sang softly and the wind whispered through the leaves, a wise old monk lived with a few devoted disciples. One quiet afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, the group sat in silence in the monastery courtyard, simply enjoying the golden stillness of dusk. Suddenly, one young disciple spoke up. "Master, you've told us many stories about the Dharma, about meditation, but you've never told us about yourself. Who was your very first teacher? Who guided you when you started your path?" The old master smiled gently, his eyes gazing far into the distance, as if he was remembering a lifelong past. He replied softly, "I didn't have just one teacher. In truth, I had many. Life itself has been my greatest teacher, and sometimes those who teach us the most aren't saints or sages at all." Seeing how quietly the disciples leaned in to listen, the master began his story. "My first teacher," he said, "was a child. Back when I was young, I was quite proud of what I thought I knew. One evening, I was walking through a quiet village and saw a young boy holding a candle, walking toward the temple. Out of arrogance, I decided to test him. I asked, 'Son, when you left your house, this candle wasn't lit, right? So can you tell me, where did the light come from?' I expected him to stumble or be confused, but the boy just gently blew out the candle and calmly asked, 'Now that the light is gone, can you tell me where it went?' I stood there, frozen, speechless. That one question shattered my pride like a mirror. In that moment, I realized, true wisdom doesn't come from clever words, but from humility, from letting go of the ego. My second teacher," he continued, "was a dog. On another day, while passing through a different village, I saw a skinny dog trying to drink from a pond. But every time he leaned down, he saw his own reflection in the water and thought it was another dog. So he barked and ran away. Over and over again, he tried, but fear held him back. Until, finally, trembling but determined, the dog took a leap of faith and jumped into the water. He drank freely and wagged his tail with joy. That moment taught me, fear is just a reflection of the mind. If you have the courage to move through it, what you'll find on the other side is freedom." And my third teacher, the master lowered his voice, was a thief. One night, I arrived in a village I'd never been to. It was dark, and I didn't know anyone. I saw a man trying to break into a house and asked him, "Excuse me, brother, could you tell me where the temple is?" He burst out laughing and said, "I'm not a builder, I'm a thief, but you look tired. If you don't mind, come rest at my place tonight." I accepted, and for the next few nights, I stayed at his home. Every evening before he went out, he would pray sincerely, and every night when he came back empty-handed, he would quietly say, "Tonight wasn't a success, but tomorrow I'll surely make it." Eventually, he did succeed. But what moved me wasn't his success in stealing, it was his unwavering persistence. I gently encouraged him to change his path, and to my surprise, he did. He left behind the old life and started a small, honest business. From that thief, I learned this. Even someone on the wrong path, if they carry a little goodness in their heart and never stop trying, they can still transform. The master paused, his voice calm and full of gratitude. "These," he said, "are just 3 of the many teachers I've had: a child, a dog, and a thief. None of them preached the Dharma, but each of them taught me something no textbook ever could." He looked into the bright eyes of his disciples and said simply, "Life is always teaching. You just need a heart that's ready to listen." And now, let's keep walking this journey a little deeper, where each simple moment might just become a turning point in awakening. 1. Life experience is a greater teacher than any lesson you'll hear. There are some things in life you only truly understand when you've lived through them. People can tell you over and over again. Books can explain it 1,000 ways. But sometimes, it takes just one fall in real life to wake you up more than 100 sermons ever could. Someone who's lost something precious will understand the value of presence. Someone who's been betrayed won't trust promises so easily anymore. And someone who's hit rock bottom learns to treasure the strength it takes just to stand again. That's why in Buddhism, we often say, experience is the greatest teacher, and suffering, if understood rightly, is the shortest path back to yourself. There's a story I like to share, both with the young just starting out and with those who've already lived through a good part of life. It's about a broken ceramic bowl. A man once dropped a bowl he truly loved. He felt sad, regretful, because no matter how much he wanted, it would never be the same again. But then, someone taught him about an ancient Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The cracks don't get hidden, they're highlighted. And the bowl, it doesn't just become whole again. It becomes more beautiful because of those cracks. Life works the same way. Every time something breaks in us, if we choose to reflect and learn, those wounds don't make us weaker. They make us deeper, stronger, softer. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once taught, the wise one is not someone who never makes mistakes, but someone who learns from their mistakes. So many people I meet, especially students of the Dharma, come carrying disappointment. They've lost a job, ended a marriage, grown distant from their children, and they ask the same questions. Why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? But as time passes, and they begin to reflect, to accept, to look within, something changes. They say things like, "I see now I'd been living so carelessly. That person leaving taught me how to love without attachment. That loss? It showed me I'd traded my freedom for things that never mattered." Because the truth is, there's no lesson more powerful than your own experience. There's no teaching deeper than the kind that leaves you in tears and still makes you move forward. And there's no one who isn't being shaped by life all the time. The only difference? Are we humble enough to learn? The Buddha's teachings were never meant to sit far from daily life. They live in your heartbreaks, in your quiet disappointments, in the dreams that fell apart, in the long, lonely nights. If you look with awareness, you'll realize even the pain was part of the practice. That's why the ones who've walked through life, through its storms and stumbles, rarely say they know it all. They don't preach. They don't correct you. They just smile. They listen. And if they speak at all, it comes from a heart that has cracked and healed. Because only after you've walked through the fire can you truly know the peace of the quiet. So if you're going through something tough right now, don't rush to blame yourself. And don't be too quick to blame life either. This might just be the lesson you needed to grow wiser, kinder, and more awake. And you know what? Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. A boy holding a candle, a little animal by the water, a person who made mistakes, but still held a little goodness inside. Let's talk about them in the next part. 2. A humble heart is the gateway to true wisdom. There's something funny about life. The wiser a person truly is, the less they feel the need to prove how much they know. And the ones who talk the most, quote the most, argue the most, are often the ones who haven't even stepped through the door of real understanding. Because wisdom isn't something to show off. It's something you live quietly. Most people think that to learn deep things, you need to seek out great masters, study in prestigious schools, or read thick books filled with ancient words. But sometimes, life sends you a very small teacher with a very big lesson. A child with no title, no degree, but one simple question can wake up a grown adult from their pride. The story goes like this. One evening, a young monk was walking through a village. At that time, he was very confident in his knowledge in the way he spoke, acted, and thought. On his way, he saw a little boy holding a candle, walking toward a temple. Curious to test him, the monk asked, "Son, when you left your house, this candle wasn't lit, right? So tell me, where did the light come from?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he gently blew out the candle, looked up, and asked, "And now that the light is gone, do you know where it went?" There was nothing the monk could say, because that question, it wasn't meant to be answered with cleverness. It was meant to reveal humility. In that one quiet moment, it wasn't just the flame that went out, it was his ego, his pride, and that little voice saying, "I know more than others." The truth is, what opens the heart isn't knowledge. It's being honest enough to say, "I still have more to learn." That's when the real learning begins. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "The fool thinks they are wise, but the wise one knows they are still learning." And honestly, that's never been more relevant than it is today. Some people read a few books and suddenly think they've seen the truth. Others have a couple of insights and start teaching like they've reached enlightenment. But those who've lived long enough, seen enough, know something else. The hardest thing isn't adding more knowledge, it's letting go of what we're already clinging to. Working with many Buddhist practitioners in the US, people in their 30s, 50s, even 70s, you start to notice something. The ones who've been through life as parents, as spouses, through success and failure, they're never embarrassed to say, "I don't know." They're not ashamed to ask questions. They don't care if others think they're inexperienced, because they've learned. A sincere question is a sign of spiritual maturity. Only when the heart is humble can the mind be open to receive something new. Today, we tend to fill ourselves with so much information, hoping it makes us smarter, stronger, more confident. But it's like a cup that's already full. Even if you pour gold into it, it'll just spill over. The more pride in the heart, the less space there is for learning. Someone who always thinks they're right never grows deeper. But someone who's willing to put down the ego, to listen with openness. Sometimes, just one simple question from a child is enough to shake their whole worldview. And you know what? Not all teachers walk on two legs. Sometimes the next lesson comes from something much smaller, something that doesn't speak at all, but reflects something inside us that we've been avoiding. In the next part, we'll explore that story. A little dog, a still pond, and a fear that no one saw coming. 3. Anyone can be a teacher if your eyes are awake. Some people pass through your life as gently as a breeze, And yet, somehow, they leave behind a lesson you'll never forget. The strange part is, those lessons don't always come from the people we expect. Not from scholars, not from spiritual gurus, not even from those society calls wise. Sometimes, it's a child who's never studied the Dharma. Sometimes, it's an animal that doesn't speak a word. And sometimes, it's someone who's walked a very wrong path in life. But if your heart is still and your eyes are truly open, then every person, every moment can become your teacher. There's an old story from Buddhist tradition about a seeker on his path. This seeker didn't just learn from monks and masters. He learned from things most people would overlook. One day, while walking past a pond, he saw a thirsty dog. The dog tried to approach the water, but every time it leaned down to drink, it saw its own reflection and mistook it for another dog. It barked, backed away, then tried again, over and over, scared of its own image. Then finally, as if tired of running or suddenly realizing the truth, the dog jumped in. And just like that, no other dog, no enemy, just itself, and the fear it had created in its own mind. The seeker stood there for a long moment, watching, and realized most of what we call fear is just a reflection of our own mind. Often, we are the ones who build the very image that holds us back. And it's only when we're brave enough to leap into reality, even if it's cold, uncomfortable, or messy, that we truly break through the wall of fear. And that was a lesson from a creature that didn't say a single word. Another time, while lost in a strange village, the seeker was offered a place to stay by a stranger. That man said honestly, "I'm a thief, but you look tired. I don't want you sleeping on the street tonight." During those nights under the same roof, the seeker noticed something unusual. Every evening before going out to steal, the man would quietly pray. And every time he came back empty-handed, he'd simply say, "Not today, but tomorrow, I'll do better." One night, the seeker gently said, "With your determination, if you used it for good, you'd succeed in something far greater than stealing." The man didn't argue. He just went quiet. And slowly, he began to change. He gave up his old ways, started a small, honest life. Not because of a lecture, not because someone made him feel guilty, but because someone saw him without judgment. Because deep inside, he still carried a little light. And that's the thing. Anyone can be our teacher if we're willing to look with awakened eyes. In the Sutra of 42 chapters, the Buddha said, "Take people as your mirror. Learn from everything. Follow the good. Awaken from the bad." No one is perfect, but everyone has the potential to reflect some piece of truth if we're open enough to see it. A child's innocent question can pull us out of our arrogance. A small animal can show us the fear we've created in our own hearts. And someone who once walked the wrong path can teach us that change is always possible. If we have faith and a sincere heart. Wisdom doesn't always come from the best, the brightest, or the most respected. It comes from those who listen deeply, from those with a humble heart, because humility is the soil where wisdom truly grows. And if our heart is big enough to learn from others, it also needs to be strong enough to learn from something else, our own fear. There's one more story closer to real life than you might think. It's about how to move through the kind of fear that grips us every day, but is really just a shadow inside the mind. Let's walk into that next. 4. Fear usually isn't real. It's just a reflection of the mind. There's something strange about fear. It feels incredibly real until you finally face it. And then suddenly, it turns out to be nothing at all. We often believe fear is something outside of us: danger, people, circumstances, the unknown future. But most of the time, what really holds us back is just a shadow we created in our own mind. It's like that story of the little dog by the pond. He was thirsty, really thirsty. The water was clear, cool, right there. But every time he stepped closer, he saw another dog staring back at him from the water. Thinking it was a rival, he barked and backed away, then stepped forward and backed off again. Over and over, torn between thirst and fear, not of a real threat, but of his own reflection. Until one moment, he just jumped in. And guess what? No other dog, just water and freedom. That's real life, isn't it? We know we need to change, but we're afraid of failing. We want to speak our truth, but we're afraid of being judged. We want to go in a new direction, but we're scared of losing approval, or being misunderstood, or ending up alone. Sometimes, we're just afraid of facing ourselves. But here's the thing, that fear, it never actually touched us. We were standing outside of it the whole time, imagining it into something bigger than it ever was. In Buddhism, this idea isn't new. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha teaches that much of suffering comes from sanya, distorted perception. We imagine danger. We imagine worst-case scenarios. We imagine defeat before we even begin. But rarely do we stop and ask, is what I'm afraid of actually real? Or is it just a reflection of me? At retreats, many people say they're afraid to sit still, afraid of silence. Because the moment they stop moving, stop talking, stop distracting themselves, all those buried emotions start rising. Old wounds, words left unsaid, memories that never healed. But when they finally have the courage to stop running from themselves, they discover, wow, it wasn't so scary after all. The thing I've avoided for years is actually the place where I can finally begin to heal. Fear, when avoided, only grows bigger. But when we look it in the eye, it fades. Like smoke in the wind. It's like standing in front of a foggy mirror. The image looks strange, maybe even scary. But once you wipe the glass, you see it was just you all along. Freedom doesn't come from escaping fear. It comes from walking into it, even if your heart is still trembling. And from there, something shifts. Courage isn't about fighting fear. It's about moving through it and realizing there's only stillness on the other side. Fear grows when we avoid it, but wisdom grows when we stop, turn toward it, and step forward anyway. And here's something else. Sometimes, the very people we think are lost, broken, or beyond repair are the ones who end up teaching us the most about resilience, about faith, about the power of change. Up next, we'll hear a story about someone just like that. A person who lived in darkness, but never let go of hope, and how they became unexpectedly a teacher of light. 5. Keep going even if you're on the wrong path. Some people don't start on the right path, but they don't give up. And sometimes, that's exactly what leads them back in the right direction. We often think spiritual growth, becoming a better person, or living mindfully all begins with a perfect step, a straight path, a clean start. But real life rarely goes in a straight line. Some people wander far, take detours, even mess up badly, but they still turn around. They still change. Why? Because deep down, they never stop believing that tomorrow can be better than today. There's a story from a small village, a story about a thief that really brings this home. One night, a traveler asked a man for directions. The man didn't lie. He said straight up, "I'm not a good person. I'm someone who breaks into people's houses. Honest. Blunt." But then came something unexpected. He added, "But if you need a place to sleep, come to my home It's not safe out here. A thief with kindness. And that wasn't the only surprising thing. Every night before going out to steal, he would stop and pray. And when he failed, he didn't get angry or bitter. He simply whispered, "Not today, but tomorrow I'll do better." What moved people wasn't what he stole or whether he succeeded or not. It was how he never gave up on the idea that tomorrow he could do better. Even in the darkness, there was a tiny light in his heart that he kept alive. One day, someone asked him, "With that kind of persistence, why not use it for something good?" He didn't get defensive. He didn't lash out. He just went quiet. And he thought, for a long time, not everyone can change overnight. But the moment you stop to reflect on your own actions, that's already a step on the path. Not long after, that man left his old life. He opened a small shop. Life was slower, poorer, but more peaceful. He no longer had to run, no longer had to lie, no longer had to hide just to survive. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha once said, "One who sees their fault and corrects it is cleansing their own mind. But one who sees the wrong and denies it only builds more suffering for their future." Real practice isn't always about how long we meditate or how many chants we recite. Sometimes it's simply this: can we be honest with our mistakes and begin again? In life, the problem isn't that we failed before, or fallen, or chosen wrong. The real danger is when we stop believing we can change. Many people feel trapped in addiction, in lies, in anger, in regret, not because they want to stay there, but because they no longer believe they deserve something better. But sometimes, all it takes is for someone to plant a tiny seed of belief in them, or for them to quietly whisper to themselves, "Tomorrow, I'll be different." That moment, that one sentence, is the beginning of transformation. And you never know, the person you once looked down on, the one who made every mistake in the book, might just be the one who teaches you the most about perseverance, about the courage to start over. Life doesn't care how many times you've fallen. Life only asks, will you try to stand up again? Just like that thief from long ago, the most powerful lessons often don't come from grand speeches or bright stages. They come from quiet, ordinary moment. A glance, a question, a simple act of kindness. That's all it takes to change someone's whole life. So what truly gives birth to wisdom? Is it degrees, experience, reputation, or is it something far more surprising and far more simple? Let's find out in the next part. 6. A sincere heart can transform anyone. There's something truly beautiful about life. It's that people can change, not because they're criticized, but because someone showed them kindness. Not because of threats, but because of a look that doesn't judge. Someone once said, "You can't heal someone by shaming them for the path they've walked." And nowhere is that more true than on the spiritual path. The story of the thief who turned his life around didn't begin with a sermon. It didn't start with harsh lectures or moral finger-pointing. It started with something surprisingly simple: acceptance. Just imagine, a person who's doing wrong knows it's wrong, but feels stuck. They've tried to change, failed, regretted it, but kept falling back into old habits because no one believed they could be different. Until one day, someone looked at them, not with judgment, but with compassion, not asking, "Why are you like this?" but asking, "Do you want to change?" That one question was enough to stir something deep inside. Some people don't need fixing. They just need someone who believes they can fix themselves. And when they feel that belief, not from a place of ego, but from a heart free of judgment, they slowly start to believe in themselves too. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Hatred is never ended by hatred. Only by love can it be overcome." And that's not just true for great wars or deep grudges. It's just as true for personal mistakes. A lot of people don't make mistakes because they're bad. They just didn't have the right understanding at the time, or the chance, or someone to guide them with sincerity. If all they receive is punishment, the only lesson they learn is, I'm not worth a second chance. But if someone shows up not with a holier-than-thou attitude, but with a simple question like, would you like to try again? That's where transformation begins. One man once said, I live a better life now, not because I became better, but because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Compassion isn't weakness. It's not turning a blind eye to what's wrong. It's the only light that can shine into darkness without scaring someone deeper into hiding. With one gentle word, one thoughtful question, one look of understanding, you might just be the person who lights someone's way out of a dark place. Sometimes, someone who's lost their way doesn't need a lecture. They just need someone to see them with eyes of understanding and care. That is how all real change begins. And in today's world, where it's so easy to condemn someone based on a post, a mistake, a single moment, practicing compassion is more important than ever. Because behind every heart is a story you can't see. And who knows? Your small act of kindness might be what helps them turn the page. From a child, to a thirsty dog, to a thief who chose to begin again, each one became a teacher not because they were perfect, but because someone was awake enough to learn, humble enough to listen, and compassionate enough to truly see. And those teachers, they only appear when we keep our hearts open. So maybe the journey of that monk long ago is really a mirror for each of us today. Because you don't need to climb mountains or find great masters to walk the path. All you need is a heart that listens and a mind that stays open. And suddenly, the world becomes your temple and everyone becomes your teacher. A child's innocent question, a dog's silent struggle, a person who once lived wrongly but chose to change. They all left unforgettable lessons, not because they were flawless, but because in that moment, the monk had the humility to learn, the mindfulness to observe, and the compassion to understand. These stories remind us, true wisdom doesn't come from knowing everything, but from never stopping the practice of learning. And often, the most powerful teachings in life aren't written in books. They're hidden in everyday moments, in failure, in missteps, in moments so ordinary we almost miss them. So keep your heart soft, keep your eyes awake, because maybe tomorrow your next teacher will appear in the form of a child, a stranger, or even your own reflection in the mirror. If this story touched you, subscribe to Buddhism Seeds. Let's keep growing together through simple but powerful teachings of the Buddha. And if someone you know might need to hear this, click like, share this message, and leave a comment below. Who has been the most unexpected teacher in your life?